First contact, last warning. The morning Admiral Sarah Chen received the call that would change humanity forever. She was drinking coffee and watching the sunrise from her office at Earth Defense Command. The bitter brew had just touched her lips when Lieutenant Rodriguez burst through the door, his face pale with terror. "Admiral, you need to see this. Now." Sarah set down her cup and followed Rodriguez to the main command center. The massive holographic display showed what appeared to be impossible. 12 enormous structures hung in space beyond Mars, each one larger than Earth's moon. They hadn't been there an hour ago. Every sensor, every satellite, every deep space monitor had somehow missed their arrival. How is this possible? Sarah whispered, staring at the alien fleet. The ships looked like massive black crystals, their surfaces reflecting no light, as if they absorbed everything around them. Dr. Marcus Webb, the facility's chief xenobiologist, stood nearby with his hands shaking as he held a data pad. His usually calm demeanor had cracked completely. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission. It's not from Earth." Sarah turned to him. "Play it." The command center fell silent as an alien voice filled the room. The words came through perfectly translated, as if the beings speaking had studied human language for years. "Inhabitants of the third planet, you are now property of the Galactic Dominion. You have achieved minimal space capability and are therefore eligible for incorporation into our empire. You will surrender all military assets immediately. Your leaders will present themselves for processing. Resistance will result in the elimination of your species. You have one planetary rotation to comply." The transmission ended, leaving the command center in stunned silence. Sarah felt her stomach drop, but her military training kicked in. She had faced impossible situations before, though nothing quite like this. "Get me President Martinez on the secure line," she ordered, "and contact every defense installation on the planet. I want a full strategic assessment in 30 minutes. As her staff scrambled to comply, Dr. Webb approached her. "Admiral, I've been analyzing their transmission. The language patterns, the phrasing, it's all very formal, almost bureaucratic. This isn't their first time doing this." "What do you mean?" Webb pulled up data on his pad. "They called us eligible for incorporation. That suggests they have a system, a process they follow. We're not the first world they've done this to." Sarah studied the alien ships on the display. Something about their positioning bothered her. They maintained perfect formation, spaced exactly equal distances apart. It spoke of discipline, yes, but also of routine. "They're confident," she murmured. "Admiral?" Rodriguez called out. "President Martinez is on the line." The next hour was a blur of emergency meetings, frantic calls with world leaders, and desperate attempts to understand what humanity was facing. The aliens, who called themselves the Dominion, had given Earth 24 hours to surrender. Every attempt to communicate, to negotiate, or to ask for more time was met with the same cold response: comply or face extinction. In the war room beneath Earth Defense Command, Sarah sat with the planet's top military leaders and Dr. Webb. The holographic display now showed detailed scans of the alien fleet. The ships were massive, clearly advanced beyond anything humanity possessed, and there were dozens of smaller craft moving between them like worker ants. General Harrison from the European Defense Force shook his head grimly. "Our weapons are useless against ships that size. Even if we launched every nuclear missile on the planet, we'd barely scratch their hulls." "What about Captain Morrison's squadron?" Sarah asked, referring to Earth's most elite fighter pilots. "If we can't fight them head-on, maybe we can find another way." As if summoned by her words, Captain Jake Morrison entered the room. The veteran pilot looked tired, but determined. His squadron had been on high alert since the alien ships appeared, running constant reconnaissance flights to gather intelligence. "Admiral, I've got good news and bad news," Morrison said, pulling up his flight data. "The bad news is their technology is centuries ahead of ours. The good news is they're not perfect." Dr. Webb leaned forward. "What do you mean?" Morrison grinned, the first smile anyone had seen all day. "Their ships are huge, powerful, and heavily shielded, but they're also slow to maneuver. When my fighters approached, their defensive systems took almost 3 seconds to lock on. In combat, that's an eternity. Sarah felt a spark of hope. You think we can exploit that? Admiral, I think we can do more than that, Morrison replied. These beings have clearly conquered other worlds, but I bet none of those worlds fought back the way humans fight back. High above Earth, on the bridge of the Dominion flagship, Fleet Commander Stor stood before a massive viewing screen showing the blue-green planet below. His forearms were clasped behind his back in the traditional pose of dominance, his scaled hide gleaming under the ship's lights. Status report, he commanded in the harsh, clicking language of the Dominion. Sub-Commander Kralth approached, his movements respectful but nervous. The deadline approaches, Commander. The humans have not responded to our ultimatum. Sexthor's compound eyes reflected his amusement. Of course they haven't. They never do initially. Fear requires time to properly set in. He had overseen the conquest of 47 worlds in his career. The pattern was always the same: initial defiance, desperate negotiation attempts, and finally, inevitable surrender. Should we begin the demonstration, Commander? Not yet, Stor replied. Let them feel the weight of their insignificance first. Soon they will beg for the privilege of serving the Dominion. Back on Earth, Sarah stood on the observation deck of Earth Defense Command, watching the alien fleet through a telescope. The ships hadn't moved since their arrival, maintaining their perfect formation like silent monuments to humanity's impending doom. Dr. Webb joined her carrying a steaming cup of coffee. I've been thinking about what you said earlier, about them being confident. And confidence can be a weakness. They expect us to behave like every other species they've conquered. But what if we don't? Sarah turned to look at him. What are you suggesting? Webb's eyes gleamed with an idea that was either brilliant or insane. Every communication we've received from them has been formal, structured, predictable. They're following a script. But humans don't follow scripts, Admiral. We improvise. Before Sarah could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Lieutenant Rodriguez's voice crackled over the intercom. Admiral, to the command center immediately. The aliens are moving. Sarah and Webb rushed to the command center where they found chaos. The alien fleet was no longer in formation. Several of the massive ships were descending toward Earth's atmosphere, while others moved to establish orbital positions around the planet. Time's up, General Harrison said grimly. Morrison's voice came over the radio from his fighter cockpit. Admiral, I've got visual on their lead ship. It's massive, but it's alone. Permission to engage? Sarah hesitated for only a moment. Earth had been given a choice, surrender or fight. The decision was never really in doubt. Morrison, you are authorized to engage. Show them what humans do when backed into a corner. Copy that, Admiral. All fighters, this is Falcon Leader. Let's give our visitors a proper Earth welcome. On the Dominion flagship, alarms suddenly began sounding. Stor spun toward his tactical display, confusion replacing his earlier confidence. What is happening? Commander, we're detecting multiple small craft approaching at high speed. They appear to be military vessels. Stor stared at the display. In his 47 conquests, no species had ever attacked his fleet during first contact. They were either too terrified or too intelligent to attempt such futility. Impossible. They must know they cannot harm us. Should we destroy them, Commander? No, Stor said slowly. Let us see what these humans are capable of. It will be educational. Morrison's fighter screamed through space toward the alien flagship. His squadron spread out in attack formation behind him. The alien ship was so large it filled his entire field of vision, its dark surface seeming to absorb the light from Earth's sun. Remember, we're not trying to destroy it, Morrison said over the radio. We're trying to learn. Hit-and-run tactics, just like we practiced. As they approached, the alien ship's defenses came online. Beams of energy lanced out toward the fighters, but Morrison had been right about their reaction time. The humans were too fast, too unpredictable. They rolled and dove between the defensive fire, closing the distance to the massive ship. Morrison's targeting system locked onto what appeared to be a sensor array on the ship's hull. Target acquired, Fox 3. The missile streaked from his fighter and impacted the alien structure in a brilliant flash. When the light faded, the sensor array was gone, leaving a blackened crater in the ship's hull. On the Dominion bridge, chaos erupted. Subcommander Krauth stared at his displays in disbelief. "Commander, they actually damaged us. How is this possible?" Stor stood frozen, his forearms rigid with shock. In 47 conquests, no species had ever drawn first blood against the Dominion. The humans hadn't just attacked his fleet, they had heard it. "Commander," Krauth pressed, "your orders?" Stor watched as the human fighters continued their attack, moving with a speed and unpredictability that his targeting systems couldn't track. One of his escort ships reported minor damage from another missile strike. These humans were fighting like they had nothing to lose. And perhaps they didn't. "Pull back to safe distance," Stor ordered, his voice tight with unprecedented uncertainty. "And get me High Arbiter Velnath immediately." As the alien ships began to withdraw, Morrison's squadron regrouped near Earth. The captain's voice crackled over the radio, filled with grim satisfaction. "Admiral, mission accomplished. We've bloodied their nose." Sarah watched from the command center as the alien fleet pulled back beyond the moon's orbit. It was a small victory, perhaps meaningless in the larger context of the conflict to come. But for the first time since the aliens arrived, she felt something other than despair. Dr. Webb stood beside her, studying the retreating ships. "They're not used to this, are they? To being hit back?" "No," Sarah agreed. "But they'll adapt. And when they return, they'll be ready for us. Then we'll just have to be ready for them." Morrison's voice came over the intercom. "After all, Admiral, we're human. We specialize in impossible odds." As Earth turned on its axis and night fell over the Defense Command Center, Sarah Chen stood watching the stars. Somewhere out there, an alien empire was deciding humanity's fate. They had superior technology, vast fleets, and the experience of conquering dozens of worlds, but they had never faced humans before. And as Sarah had learned in her years of military service, humans had one trait that technology couldn't replicate and experience couldn't predict. They absolutely refused to quit. The war for Earth's freedom was about to begin, and humanity was ready to show the galaxy what happened when you tried to chain a species that valued liberty above life itself. The art of stubborn war 3 days had passed since the first skirmish, and the Dominion fleet had returned with reinforcements. High Arbiter Velnath himself had arrived aboard the massive command dreadnought Eternal Conquest, a ship so large it cast shadows across entire continents as it passed overhead. Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the reinforced bunker that had become Earth's new command center, studying satellite feeds of the alien fleet. What had been 12 ships was now over 50, arranged in precise battle formations around the planet. Every major city on Earth lived under the shadow of alien vessels, their dark hulls blocking out portions of the sky. "Status report," Sarah called out as she entered the main tactical room. Lieutenant Rodriguez looked up from his station, exhaustion clear in his eyes. "Ma'am, they've established blockade positions over every major population center. No communications. Are getting through their jamming fields. We're operating on emergency protocols only." Dr. Webb approached with a data pad, his face grim. "Admiral, I've finished analyzing the transmissions we intercepted from their command ship. The news isn't good." Sarah took the pad and read the translation. Her jaw tightened with each line. "They're calling us a Category 5 resistance species. What does that mean?" "According to their military protocols, it means we're the first species to inflict damage during initial contact. They've escalated their conquest classification to maximum level." Before Sarah could respond, Captain Morrison's voice crackled over the radio from somewhere above the cloud cover. "Command, this is Falcon Leader. I've got visual on their new formation. It's different from before." "Different how, Captain?" "They're not just positioned for intimidation anymore, Admiral. This is a siege formation. They're settling in for a long fight, high above on the bridge of the Eternal Conquest. High Arbiter Velnath studied tactical displays with growing irritation. His towering form, nearly 3 meters tall and covered in chitinous armor, dominated the bridge. Unlike Fleet Commander Stor's scaled appearance, Velnath resembled a fusion of insect and machine, with cybernetic enhancements gleaming along his limbs. "Explain to me," Velnath said in a voice like grinding metal, "how a primitive species has delayed our conquest schedule by 72 hours. Stor stood at attention, his forearms clasped behind his back. "High Arbiter, the humans do not follow standard behavioral patterns. They attack when they should surrender. They adapt when they should break. 47 worlds have fallen before your fleet, Commander. What makes this one different?" Stor's compound eyes reflected uncertainty. They seemed to view impossible odds not as deterrents, but as challenges. "Our psychological warfare protocols have no effect." Velnath turned to the tactical display, showing Earth below. "Then we will demonstrate the futility of resistance in terms they cannot ignore. Begin orbital bombardment of their military installations." Back on Earth, alarms screamed through the command bunker as the first energy beams lanced down from orbit. Sarah watched in horror as the European Defense Command facility disappeared in a flash of light, leaving only a crater where thousands of personnel had been stationed moments before. "They're targeting our military bases," General Harrison reported from his console. "Sydney, Moscow, and Colorado Springs are gone. They're working their way through our entire defense network." Sarah's mind raced. The aliens were following standard military doctrine. Eliminate enemy command and control capabilities first. But humanity's real strength had never been in their official military installations. "Morrison, are you still airborne?" "Affirmative, Admiral. My squadron is intact, but we're running low on fuel and ammunition." "Then it's time to try something different. Land at civilian airfields, any strip you can find. We're going unconventional." Over the next 6 hours, something unprecedented in the history of galactic warfare began to unfold. As the Dominion systematically destroyed Earth's military infrastructure, humans began fighting back from the most unexpected places. Commercial airlines converted their passenger jets into missile platforms. Farmers used crop dusters to lay smokescreen across alien landing zones. Civilian engineers modified construction equipment into improvised weapons. Amateur radio operators maintained communications networks using equipment the aliens couldn't detect or didn't consider worth jamming. Captain Morrison found himself leading not just military pilots, but civilian aviators flying everything from corporate jets to vintage warbirds. They launched hit-and-run attacks from hidden airstrips, using tactics that no military academy had ever taught, because no sane commander would have considered them. Dr. Webb, meanwhile, had made a disturbing discovery while analyzing captured alien technology. "Admiral, I need to show you something. It's about how they've conquered other worlds." Sarah followed him to his makeshift laboratory, where pieces of damaged alien equipment lay on examination tables. "What did you find?" "Their standard conquest protocol is based on overwhelming force followed by psychological submission. They destroy military assets, eliminate leadership, and then the population surrenders out of fear." Webb pulled up holographics, displays showing conquest records from other worlds. "Look at these timelines. Most species surrender within hours of the first demonstration of power. But we haven't." "Exactly, and it's driving them crazy. They don't have protocols for this situation, because they've never encountered a species that keeps fighting after losing their organized military." Sarah studied the alien conquest records. Every species had followed the same pattern: initial resistance, devastating retaliation, and swift surrender. Humanity was rewriting their playbook simply by refusing to quit. On the Eternal Conquest, High Arbiter Velnath stared at tactical reports with growing disbelief. His fleet had destroyed every major military installation on the planet, eliminated most of Earth's official government structures, and established dominance in every measurable way. And yet the humans were fighting harder than before. "Report," he commanded. Sub-Commander Kralth approached nervously. "High Arbiter, our ground forces report continued resistance in all sectors. The humans are using improvised weapons, civilian vehicles, and unconventional tactics. We've lost 14 scout ships to attacks by what appear to be modified agricultural aircraft. Agricultural aircraft? Velnath's voice rose to a roar. How does a species capable of interplanetary flight lose vessels to farming equipment? The humans modify everything, High Arbiter. They've turned their civilian infrastructure into a weapons platform. Every factory, every workshop, every garage is producing weapons or ammunition. Velnath turned to Stor. This is beyond standard resistance patterns. What are we dealing with? Stor had been studying human behavior for 3 days now, and what he had learned disturbed him more than any enemy fleet ever had. High Arbiter, I believe we are witnessing something unprecedented in galactic warfare. The humans do not separate their military from their civilian population. Every individual is a potential combatant. That's impossible. No civilized species operates that way. The humans may not be civilized by our standards, High Arbiter. As if to prove his point, alarms began sounding throughout the Dominion fleet. Another wave of human attacks was incoming, but these were unlike anything the aliens had seen before. Civilian spacecraft, modified beyond recognition, swarmed toward the alien vessels like angry wasps. Morrison's voice came over the radio as he led the desperate assault. All units, remember what we're fighting for. They want to make us slaves. But humans bow to no one. The modified civilian craft couldn't match alien technology. But they didn't need to. They were fast, unpredictable, and piloted by humans who had nothing left to lose. Some were cargo haulers fitted with improvised missiles. Others were racing yachts packed with explosives. A few were even modified personal vehicles launched from improvised catapults. Most were destroyed before reaching their targets, but enough got through to damage several alien ships. More importantly, they demonstrated something that shook the Dominion to its core. Humans would weaponize anything, sacrifice everything, and never stop fighting. On Earth's surface, Dr. Webb monitored the battle from his laboratory when he made a breakthrough that would change everything. Hidden in the alien communication protocols, he found something the Dominion had never expected anyone to discover. Admiral, you need to hear this, he called out urgently. Sarah rushed to his station. What is it? I've been analyzing their internal communications and I found something. They're scared. Scared? Of us? Webb played back intercepted alien transmissions, their words translated into English. The conversations revealed confusion, frustration, and something the mighty Dominion had never felt before. Uncertainty. They've conquered 47 worlds using the same tactics, Admiral. Overwhelming force followed by psychological submission. But those tactics don't work on a species that views surrender as worse than death. Sarah listened to the alien communications with growing amazement. The beings who had seemed invincible just days ago were now questioning their own strategies, requesting reinforcements, and debating whether humans were even a rational species. They don't understand us, she realized. More than that, they're starting to fear us. Not our weapons or our technology, but our refusal to act the way conquered species are supposed to act. The tide of battle began to turn not through superior firepower, but through something far more powerful. The human refusal to accept defeat. Every destroyed human ship was replaced by 2 more improvised craft. Every fallen pilot was succeeded by civilian volunteers eager to join the fight. The aliens had the better technology, but humans had something the Dominion had never encountered: the absolute conviction that freedom was worth any price. High Arbiter Velnath stood on his bridge, watching his mighty fleet struggle against an enemy that should have surrendered days ago. His chitinous features reflected an emotion he had never experienced: doubt. Status report, he commanded. High Arbiter, we have achieved tactical superiority in all measurable categories. We control the orbital space. We have eliminated their military infrastructure, and we have demonstrated our overwhelming technological advantage. Then why are they still fighting? The question hung in the air like a challenge to everything the Dominion understood about warfare. In 47 previous conquests, superior technology had always been enough. The threat of extinction had always produced surrender, but humans seemed to view the threat of extinction not as a reason to surrender, but as a reason to fight harder. High Arbiter, Stor said carefully. I request permission to attempt communication with their leadership. Perhaps we can reach some form of understanding. Velnath considered this. In all his years of conquest, he had never needed to negotiate with a defeated enemy. But then again, these humans didn't seem to realize they were defeated. Granted, but Commander, if diplomacy fails, we will be forced to sterilize the entire planet. The Dominion cannot appear weak before the galaxy. As the fourth day of conflict dawned over Earth, Admiral Sarah Chen received an unexpected communication. The alien fleet was requesting a parley. She stood in the ruins of what had once been New York City, looking up at the massive alien ships hovering overhead. Around her, human survivors continued their desperate resistance, turning rubble into fortifications and debris into weapons. Dr. Webb approached with the alien transmission. Admiral, they want to talk. Sarah smiled grimly. For 3 days, the mighty Galactic Dominion had tried to break humanity's will through superior force. They had destroyed cities, eliminated governments, and demonstrated their overwhelming technological advantage. And now, they wanted to negotiate. Tell them, Sarah said, that if they want to talk, they can come down here and explain to us face to face why we should surrender to beings who destroy our cities and threaten our children. As the message was transmitted, Sarah looked around, at the human survivors still fighting in the ruins. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and facing extinction, but they were still human. And humans, Sarah had learned, possessed something that the most advanced technology in the galaxy couldn't replicate: the stubborn, magnificent refusal to quit when everything they loved was on the line. The war for Earth was far from over, but for the first time since the aliens arrived, Sarah Chen allowed herself to believe that humanity might just be too stubborn to conquer.